After having read Carol and Jessup's book, I got a better understanding of this one. What's different about Elissa Wall's book is the author was married by Jeffs at the age of 14 to a cousin who was abusive to her at a previous time when the prophet ordered Wall's dad to repent from afar because he couldn't control his family. Control in the FLDS meant not being able to keep the woman sweet and obedient, and their children likewise. Elissa and her siblings were forced to live on the ranch of an uncle who had an abusive son, who Elissa was later forced to marry. Like Caroline Jessup, Elissa Wall had plural mothers. They didn't get along. It created havoc and disharmony in the home, and Wall's biological mother went to the prophet Rulon Jeffs for help. Jeffs was incapacitated from a stroke, and his son Warren ordered her to leave for a while and allow Wall's dad to repent and work toward the prophet's good graces to let his family come back. They were able to return, but with the stipulation that her dad could control the family. Another eruption broke out, leading Elissa's mother to once again call the prophet for guidance. This one led to Wall's mother being reassigned to another man. In the meantime, Warren Jeffs had taken control of the sect and was putting out new proclamations from the Lord, which included no more public school because they were contaminated by the outside influences, science, history, and the arts. Another thing that both books mention is the rift in the community during the 80s, in which women were being assigned to men in marriage by more than one councilman or through the prophet. This led to the prophet at that time, named Uncle Roy, to declare that assignments of marriage should only be proclaimed by the prophet. The council elders and the percentage of the community disagreed with this, which led to the split. The ones that sided with the council elders were banished from the community and formed their own community. Both communities were forbidden to have close contact with each other, and the families who sided with the councilmen were called apostates. As Wall points out, leaving all the decisions and power to one man can be a very dangerous thing. Elissa got to talk to the prophet Rulon Jeffs and tell him tearfully that she believed she wasn't ready for marriage, that she was only 14 and she was being told to marry her first cousin. Still recovering from a stroke and being hard of hearing, he asked her to repeat what she'd said as he ate his lunch. When she was able to compose herself, she repeated her story, only to have Warren jump in and tell him loudly that Elissa thinks she knows better than the prophet and says she's not ready. He said it in a tone that twisted her words. And finally, the old man, Rulon Jeffs, the prophet, looked at her and told her to follow her heart. Of course, Elissa took this to mean that she didn't have to marry the creep. When she left Rulon's side, Warren told her to expect to be married. She repeated what the prophet had said, and he said what he meant was that you know in your heart what is right, and that it's right to follow what the prophet says. Elissa contemplated suicide, and her mother was no help. She tried to intervene for her daughter and begged Warren to let her daughter wait a couple of years before marrying. No go. Those were the prophet's commands and must be obeyed. Pressure was on her mother to make sure she got her daughter married, or she'd probably find herself in an even worse position. she'd be damned to hell for all eternity. She feared that more than she loved her daughter, she would not protect her from statutory rape because she feared eternal punishment for herself and for her children. She would also risk losing her She wouldn't risk losing her status in the community or being treated like a leper in the only world she ever known. So after being forced out of public school and away from the only true friends she ever had, and losing her older brother's protection when they were ordered out of Fred Jessup's house for re-education, Elissa was alone except for her mother and 2 younger sisters still living with them. Now the day of the wedding has arrived, and Warren Jeffs presides over the nuptials in Nevada, away from the scrutiny of the authorities, and at the hotel that Caroline Jessup worked at for her husband. Jeffs marries the couple, orders them to be bound for all eternity, and Lisa said it felt like she was being condemned to eternity either way. Elissa's husband literally forced himself on her after several nights after their marriage. Having grown up in a cult like this where sex education was taboo, and the girls were taught to view boys as venomous snakes, until their wedding day, Elissa had no idea what Alan was doing to her. She cried to her mother and confided in a few of her sisters in her household that Alan was doing horrible things to her. They tried to explain to her about man-wife relationships, but she didn't understand. Her mother said that Alan will teach you. Elissa said at this time she was still naive enough to think that the prophet, Warren Jeffs, would understand and release her from marriage. You can't get divorced in a marriage that the prophet has sanctioned. To do so would be going against the priesthood, and you could risk losing your salvation. Jeff sent her on her way and accused her of being disobedient and that she should never come to him again without her husband first. Later, her mother was given orders to distance herself from her daughter, and Elissa and Alan were granted their own home, a mobile home on FLDS property. Elissa submitted to her husband by laying there while he did his thing. She counted to herself until it was over. Couples that are married in the FLDS are assigned living quarters. At least the newlywed ones are. If a woman is assigned to a man with previous wives, she moves in with the extended family. Practically every life decision a woman makes in this cult must be approved by either her husband, who is the priesthood head, or the prophet. If one or the other said she can't go to college or work someplace or move to a new location, she won't. Her role is to be submissive, obedient, and a childbearer to her husband. Near the book's end, Elissa met with prosecutors about the abuse she suffered under the control of Alan Steed. That's the cousin she was forced to marry. And especially to testify against Warren Jeffs. Among the criminal charges against Jeffs were rape of a minor, the banishment of underage boys from their homes and families, and using the church community's bank as a tool for control and manipulation. Jeffs could decide where people lived and in what they lived. When Elissa found the courage to stop staying under the same roof as her prophet-appointed husband, her husband went to the bishop and Jeffs to complain that his wife was not being obedient, fulfilling her duties as a celestial wife. The best decision Jeffs made was releasing Alan from his obligation from her, code word for divorce. Their marriage was dissolved not because of any abuse she suffered as a minor and getting raped and battered. It was because she had developed a close relationship with a man whom she would later marry, who was kind to her and a refuge from the community. And Jeff was found guilty of being an accomplice to rape of a minor and sentenced to 5-year consecutive terms to life. After the verdict, new information came out about Jeffs. Not only is he a sexual deviant who sodomized his own nephew and had immoral contact with his sister, he married underage girls while still in the sect. During a recorded conversation in prison he had with his visiting brother, he admitted he was a false prophet and that he had committed immoral acts. He tried unsuccessfully to hang himself in his prison cell. And the book ends where Wall's ex-husband, the one that she was forced to marry, his trial was still pending. And Jeff's it ends when Jeff is going on trial for these crimes.